Ferguson, now he'll let it go from downtown, and he scores. Point game finish. Ferguson got the flyby, open lane, scoop and score.
One of the players that's been a fixture for this team over the last couple years and in and out of the rotation some this season has been Terrance Ferguson. But guys, he had a show-out performance in a home win over the Philadelphia 76ers on a Friday night when Chesapeake Energy Arena was rocking back in November. It was an overtime game. T-Ferg went off for 19 points in the contest. And just from looking back at that home win, which came early in the season when the Thunder was struggling to maybe finish off some of those games, guys, what stood out to you about Ferg's role in that performance? Let's start with Matt.
Well, he made 7 of 9 shots in that game. 5 of the 10 threes the team made, he knocked down. And when Ferguson scores at some volume, this team wins. When he scored in double figures during the season, 6-1 was the record. So I think that he always brings a defensive frame of mind to games. When he becomes more assertive on the offensive end of the floor, it really makes a difference in the outcome of the game. And clearly on that night when the team had to rally multiple times and then overwhelm Philadelphia in overtime, outscoring them 20-12, Ferguson's 19 were really substantial in that win.
Yeah, man, they came at really good times because the Thunder had some big moments in that second half. He knocked down some shots in the third quarter, and I thought that he had the biggest shot of the game maybe in making the first bucket of overtime, which always kind of releases that pressure after getting through regulation. Who's going to kind of take control of that 5-minute extra period? And he was playing with confidence throughout that second half, really playing with confidence throughout the game. And I thought that his first shot of overtime kind of set the tone to help the Thunder push him across the finish line to get that win.
Well, when you talk about tone, what I look at is that night, that was a big 76ers lineup. Nerlens fouled out in that game. What do you do when you're playing against Horford? You're playing against Embiid, Tobias Harris. Throw Ben Simmons in there, man. That dude's 6'10" point guard. You can't drive the lane. You just can't. And I thought he did a good job of recognizing, spacing, knocking down the three. Matt, you brought up, he knocked down half the team's three-point shots that night. That's a big factor. I think being a young player, you have to learn to recognize, not try to go in there and drive and try to make layups because, Embiid, all those guys are going to throw it out. Adjusting to what the team needed that night. They needed his three-point shooting. Now, we'll talk about his defense maybe a little bit later, but I thought that key for that particular night against that big Philly lineup was his three-point shooting.
Well, let's talk about the defense now, guys, because in the first quarter of that game, on the first 3 defensive possessions, he was in the mix, forcing a tough missed shot, making a steal, and then he forced Tobias Harris to shoot the ball off the side of the backboard. So defensively, he really helped set the tone in that game as well, and he's done that a lot for this team all season long. I just want to get you guys' take on, the season he had. He missed 8 games due to personal reasons, played in 50, started in 37. Just overall, what has Ferg brought to the table to this year's team, which has been a unique group?
Well, Matt, as you said in your first thought, the one thing that shows up night after night after night with Terrance Ferguson is his defense. He came into this year, he wanted to be more physical. He wanted to be able to battle some of the bigger players like Tobias Harris, like Josh Richardson, like Ben Simmons, who he faced up in this matchup. But what he brought on a nightly basis was consistency, defensive versatility. It was there night after night. If you watch Terrance Ferguson defend his man away from the basketball, it is like a track meet. Not to mention, you're basically like a defensive lineman trying to get over these screens. It's really remarkable what he was able to do on a nightly basis because he's going up against the opposing team's best player out on the wing, and opposing offenses are doing everything they can to get that guy open. So it was fun to watch. It's been fun to see his development and his growth in being relied upon to defend that best player.
Well, it's a real comfortable blanket for a coach to know, okay, this is a primary wing scorer. We got a player that can at least hold his own here. And the other thing Ferguson's done this season, Chris, is a season ago, he was very foul prone. He didn't understand the technique needed to be allowed to guard guys. And he was on the bench quickly with 3 fouls in a lot of games last season. I credit Andre Robertson for a lot of film study with Ferg, teaching him how to navigate screens without exposing his hands and exposing body parts to be called for some of those ticky-tack fouls. And Ferguson, to his credit, was a sponge in those learning sessions, and you see that reflect in his play. Now he navigates screens in a totally different way. And that certainly has made a big difference from that end of the floor. He's still slim, which aids him in some ways to get around or through those screens. And he's a player that you look at and you feel like he's still got to gain a little bit more strength to stand tough and stand tall against some of the bigger guys he's got to defend in the NBA. But I think Ferguson's calling card is absolutely on the defensive end of the floor, and it's something to not be taken lightly.
One of the things he talks about is not having happy feet. And Michael, I want to get your perspective on that and just how much footwork matters at that position.
Well, first of all, when you're guarding against, some of the best scorers in the league, you're going to make mistakes. And I think that's what I've seen the evolution of his footwork, not getting his head, letting his head hang down when he makes a mistake. I mean, think about the start of this season. First game of the season, Donovan Mitchell. You got to chase that guy off screens, okay? You come back home, first home game, second home game against the Washington Wizards, Bradley Beal. You got to chase that guy. You got to do all this kind of stuff, and it changes every night. The footwork doesn't change. I mean, how you guard a guy, even offensively. And I think in year 3 for him, that's where I've seen the most improvement. You talk about those happy feet. Yeah, that's good, but you got to keep that under control. You got to pull it out when you need to. And I thought this year he did a much better job. And I was really starting to understand. Maybe this guy is the Thunder's best defensive player, because I thought at the start of the season that was up for grabs.
Well, as the year went on, and really over the last month, Ferg was a guy that was coming off the bench and able to be a little bit more of a defensive stopper in that second group. He also was a guy that was maybe a little bit one-dimensional on the offensive end of the floor, kind of a 3-and-D guy that we talk about. 78% of his shots were coming from behind the three-point line. That was a top 5 mark in the league. As you were looking forward to the final month or so of the season and into the postseason, what did you guys envision as maybe Ferg's biggest role on this team in those crunch time playoff situations?
I think it's likely what you just said, Nick. I think that he's a player that, because of the defensive acumen he brings, can stabilize that second unit and provide some balance in what's going on the defensive end of the floor. And I think he's certainly capable of playing more substantial minutes. And when he gets hot on the offensive end, then there's that latitude to and Billy Donovan has shown he's willing to do that, to give him more minutes. But I do think he needs to force defenses to hold a level of accountability when he's out there that is still an ongoing work in progress. And once that evolves, this is a Bruce Bowen type player, a guy you've got to account for on the perimeter if he's aggressive, looking for his shot. Also a player that you can't just sleep on and believe he's going to camp out in a corner on a wing, that can make back cuts and make himself more of a force on the offensive end. If those things pick up a tick, then this is a guy that's going to get, I think, quite a role in what the rotation looks like come playoff time.
Well, the reason that he's always on the floor to begin with is his reliability. There was reliability amongst the coaches that they had in Terrance Ferguson no matter what. It's the reason why he started as many games as he did over the last couple of years. And going back to what he gave in this Philly game, if he were to give the Thunder any offense whatsoever, I always kind of call it bonus offense on the air, because any time that he was making a three, it was kind of an unexpected bucket because he was on the floor for his defense. So if there was any way that he could provide the offense to complement what he was giving on the defensive end, it would have been a big bonus for the Thunder going into the postseason.
Well, and I think it comes down to also to knowing your role. All right, what does the coach want you to do? All right, now I was a great scorer in this league.
One of the best, Mike. One of the best.
Hey, Michael, the alarm clock just went off.
But I did what my coaches wanted me to do. They said, hey, Cage, play defense, rebound, block shots, get up and down the floor. Now, for T-Ferg, you can see a little bit of, hey, this is what the coaches want me to do, make moves, make hard drives to the basket, kick out to shooters, and then spot up. And I thought that's the evolution of his game, and he's continuing to get better.
He's working on that. The key is the ball can't just be hot potato right back out of his hand. When the ball gets swung to him, it's got to go up in rhythm. Sometimes even just shooting the ball is the best thing that can happen for your offense, because your team knows when the shot is going up and can rely on that. Guys, it's been an interesting year for T-Ferg, one that he's had to overcome some struggles with, but he's done a really nice job of getting himself back in the rotation and continuing to work to be a very positive contributing member to this team. It was fun to break down his game. Thanks, guys.